everyone. Welcome back to another episode. Today we have MC Laubscher with us. So welcome to the show, man.
Great to be back and great to connect. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, man, me too. This is round two. If you can start us off a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm an investor and an entrepreneur. I started several businesses, but one of my businesses that have reached a lot of folks over the past 6 years is Cashflow Ninja. It started as a podcast that then went to be downloaded in over 180 countries, millions of downloads, and it turned into a full-blown educational company. And then I also have two other businesses. One is an insurance brokerage where we specialize in a cash flow management strategy using life insurance. Folks have heard of it as infinite banking or bank on yourself. That's Producers Wealth, and we help clients in all over 50 states in the United States implement and execute that strategy. And I also have a company called Producers Capital Partners, where essentially we do syndicated investments in real estate, like in multifamily and in resorts. And we've also done some syndicated investments in energy projects, which have been just absolutely crushing it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, I remember. So I bought your book actually recently, even though, because I don't know when that book had come out, but I don't know if it was out at the time of our first interview. Regardless, I had bought it and I went through actually the whole thing. It was a few months ago. And then I clicked the link in your ebook and I started to actually look more into your programs. And I will tell you, at least for somebody in my position, every single thing that you offer, I was interested in. So I was like, okay, this is cool. So you're definitely, the language or your marketing copy is right on target. I will tell you that. So first question for you, and then I want to dive into detail and all this stuff, but what were you doing before this? How did you, I think you said you had ran a business or so before. So what led you to where you're at now?
Yeah. So, I am originally from South Africa. So I came here in 2001, which is pretty wild. If I think about it now, it's already 2022, 21 years later. Wow. And I was 22 when I came here, but I originally came from South Africa. And I've always been, because I grew up in South Africa, right? And it's funny. And this is the reason why I'm going to share this is because it relates to now. I grew up in South Africa during a time that was extremely uncertain. I mean, we literally went from a totalitarian government, the apartheid regime, to essentially Nelson Mandela was released out of prison, to essentially, all the political parties sitting down and negotiating and talking about what a new country would look like, to eventually having elections and then establishing a new constitution. So it was a time of massive uncertainty. It was a time of disruption, obviously, of the status quo, massive changes happening literally every week something changed, right? To bring this home to folks, I went to school and I was a young man when this happened. We went through a period of time where the country didn't have a flag. Okay, let that sink in for a second.
Yeah, that is.
So
yeah.
You don't have a flag. Imagine you're living in the United States and then all of a sudden, there's a school flag, but there's no flag of your country. So that's what I mean by uncertainty, disruption, change, chaos. I mean, we literally were on the edge of a civil war then too. It was experiencing that as a young man, I was comfortable being uncomfortable. Because literally since I was 12 years old, I didn't know anything other than being in a world where you don't know what's going on, you know? So bringing that into to kind of today, I just wanted to share that. That's how we've helped a lot of people during the past 3 years because we can connect to that. But back to your question, what did I do before that? Came here in 2001 from South Africa. I traveled and played sports here. And I was kind of one of those nerdy guys on the sports bus or plane that read on history and economics and, finance and that kind of stuff. While I was playing sports, I did some consulting, but then I also worked in real estate for a friend because, I was playing in a league that could be considered semi-professional. You couldn't hold a full-time job doing what I was doing. I was traveling all the time, playing in different cities all over the United States and sometimes international too. So, I was working for a friend in real estate. That's how I saw the inside of a business, how real estate works. I took some of the money that I made playing sports, bought my first real estate property. That was actually around 2002. After I paid all of the expenses associated with it, after I put tenants in there, it was cash flowing. And I'm like, holy cow. I read Robert Kiyosaki's book about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and he talked about cash flow. And I'm like, I read the book, took action. This is cash flow. And then I also started to figure out through this friend of mine that was born into a very wealthy family. They have a huge real estate empire. But I started to kind of like see like what they were doing inside of their family, because they ran it like a family office, which is like a wealth firm that manages the money of a family. And that's when I started to realize that this family is literally a bank. And I learned the banking concept of how to become your own banker, which led me to, the Nelson Nash Institute and developing a relationship with the late great Nelson Nash. He was a mentor of mine. And then just learning the real estate game from my friend at that stage, seeing that, I had that mindset of, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to find something. I'm going to do this and build this. But I started to realize through that process that, it's better to do things together with folks, and especially partnering with Cashflow Ninjas, because you can't compete with them. Weekend warriors can't compete with them. Those guys, like, for example, him and his friend, they own the market on the north side of the city of Chicago. Nothing moved without those guys knowing about it in real estate. So instead of like trying to compete with those guys, which would be impossible, how do you partner with them? And how do you do things together as a group? And everybody brings their skill sets, their talents, their unique abilities to the table. And then you partner with those folks. So I realized I had to develop myself and learn skill sets, which then, I did some consulting, and then I just took for a couple of years. And then I just took basically the leap of starting several businesses. Most of them were failures. And then I started to do pretty well with the one business. And then all of a sudden, the one thing led to another. That business was blowing up. Then I started a podcast, and, fast forward the next 6 years, here we go, Dude,
it's incredible, man. And so I want to, because I know in your book, I think it's 17, you talk about the 17, obviously there's more than that, but I think it's the top 17 cash flowing or ways to do cash flow investing.
Oh, 21. Yeah. 20 of the 21 base cash flow niches. And I added 5 as bonuses, but 26 is not good marketing.
No, gotcha. Okay. So I want to talk about those, but what are your thoughts on like what we're going through now? Because actually what you started with, I love that you started there, because that was like chaos and uncertain times. And I think for some people in the US, like I'm 30 right now, and besides like the COVID thing that happened, which I would say most people would say that was kind of like, it was a big crash, but it was very short,
Yep.
So like this actually I would consider, and I know 2008 happened, but I was like, what was I? I was like 12 or something. I don't know. I was like 14, something like that. So too young. So this is like the first big, what a lot of people that I trust in are saying like, hey, the next few years, whether it's 6 months or it's 5 years, whatever it is going to be a time that's going to be good to have some cash and to be buying stuff, because things are going to be on sale. So what is your like strategy, or what are your thoughts on the next few years? Because it's definitely uncertain times. For a lot of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I will share this, what we're in the process of is a slow collapse. And people are like, what do you mean? Most of your listeners have probably heard about the concept of the Great Reset, which was a conspiracy theory until the World Economic Forum literally published books about it and can't stop talking about it. And I'm like, all right, they're telling you the Great Reset. They also talk about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the same groups, the people out of Davos. It's funny that, in the past, people were always like, is there somebody that runs the world? Who's they? It's like this crazy the conspiratorial kind of mindset. It's like, no, literally, they're in Davos. It's the World Economic Forum. They're literally telling you, this is what's going on, this is what's happening, and this is where it's all going. So, which is kind of nice, because it takes the guesswork out of it, right? So we're in a controlled collapse. The systems are resetting. So what people don't, this is what they need to understand. This is going to be different than 2008. This is going to be different than your mom and your dad's crashes that they went through. I still remember the one in 2000, the tech one, right? I was in college when that still happened, but I still remember that. And that was brutal for a lot of folks. So this is not your mom and your dad's crash. This is also not your grandpa and your grandmother's crash. This is literally a reset of systems. And what the folks out of Davos that talk about the great reset is telling you is that the systems and processes that and structures that we have taken for granted our entire lives is in the process of collapsing. So years, and that they're telling you that. Okay, that's not me. That's literally the think tank. I mean, you could look this up. There are videos talking about this, Mr. Klaus Schwab and all of the leaders and so forth. So they're telling you, hey, the great reset is happening. System, structures, processes that you've taken for granted your entire life is in the process of collapsing. There'll be new ones taking their place. So what systems? The financial system and the monetary system is one of them. Huge. The health system. The way that the food system is huge. The way the economy itself, right? And that's where the fourth industrial revolution comes in, which is this technological revolution, which they talk about. Again, not me saying, they're talking about 5G, the Internet of Things, not just the connecting people to the internet or the being connected on the web, but things being connected. Smartphones, smart cars, smart, things in your house. So what does that have to do with an economy? That's massively disrupting, right? So just think about it. You've got 5G, you've got the Internet of Things, you've got 3D printing, you've got all these. I mean, I had surgery last year. A robot did the surgery. The doctor was literally sitting with a mouse clicking on the side, like it was, I'm like, mind blown, all right? Like mind blown. But this is where we are already. So just think where we will be 5 years from now, 10 years. So again, people get doomy and gloomy about this stuff. I get really exciting. I get excited because I'm like, I remember like the internet revolution. And it was the same doom and gloomers that said, oh my gosh, it's going to destroy all of the jobs and nobody's going to have any work. What are we going to do with all these people, all these companies that are going to be closed, Same kind of crowd was back in 2000. I remember out of college, they go, there's not going to be any jobs for anyone. The internet's going to take over everything. The internet created some of the biggest opportunities of our lifetime to build businesses and do the things like we're doing right now, right? So anyway, so that's some of the systems that are being reset. I mean, it's in the process. Now, this happening has massive consequences in the environment that business owners and investors have to operate in. So this happening right now, by the way, one of the other systems that I didn't share was energy, how that's going to change. And we're seeing that already, right? We're seeing the changes in energy. We're seeing the changes in food, that kind of stuff. But all these things changing have consequences because, Grant Cardone, like probably a lot of your folks have known of him. What a marketer. But Grant says we live on an economic planet. We don't live he goes, it's not a political planet. It's an economical planet, but it manifests itself politically because of the things that happen in the economy. That is very well put. That's exactly the chaos that you're going to see, because there's going to be a lot of people that don't understand what's going on because they watch CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of the fake news kind of like outlets, most media platforms. It's not even informing people, it's misinforming people. So they're not going to see any of this stuff coming because people are not talking about this like the two of us on any of these platforms. They're like, do you think we're in a recession? I think maybe, we changed the definition. This is
crazy.
yeah. This is what they're talking about. They're not going to see any of this stuff. So, where it leads to where we are right now, I just wanted to set the table, big picture, massive changes. They're telling you it's coming. It's already happening. We're already starting to see the energy stuff. We're already starting to see with food. You're going to see more and more chaos with food, by the way, coming in the next couple of months. You're going to see stuff happening in the world financial system, which essentially, and the monetary system, which is debt-based. We're at the end of a super debt cycle. Like we cannot get out of this mess. You're going to have to reset it and start over. They're already telling you to get excited about central bank digital currencies. That's the solution that they're going to offer you. So you got all this stuff coming. And I just wanted to give a big picture. So where are we now? Back to are we in a recession? Could we be in a recession? Well, they changed the definition. Like the idiot. I mean, the conversation that the narratives out there. I mean, it's literally like Idiocracy, the movie Idiocracy. One of the first things that I would say, somebody asked me the other day, are we in a recession? I said, you know what? The first thing is the numbers that it doesn't matter, because this is how, I can't think of another word, perverse it is. The typical definition, right before, of course, this administration, that all the definitions are changing. It's not just a political comment. It's all of them. They're all in the same club, and we ain't in it. But essentially, typically they said 2 quarters of negative GDP growth.
Yep.
But the GDP that they measure is based on spending, not on producing and creating stuff. Like that's an actual economy. That's how perverse it is, because they change. The United States is what a powerhouse. The US were like from around World War II. And after that, that's why the US was a global superpower. That's why they got awarded the world reserve currency status in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Agreement, because the US, there was no war fought on the mainland. Yes, they were attacked at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, but essentially the US produced and created so much stuff to the rest of the world that everyone started developing trade deficits with the US, because the US just produced goods and services and eventually soldiers to the war front. And back in those days, you had to settle trade deficit with gold. So all of the gold ended up at Fort Knox and in the Federal Reserve. And, he who has the gold makes the rules. That's just how the world works, right? So the US ended up being this massive, massive superpower because they could produce and create stuff. And they, of course, had a massive military that was, held basically in esteem as invincible up until, I would say, the past 12 months. But essentially, that's, when you look at recession, we're already in it. I would argue and say that if we're going to look back, because most people are not going to see coming what I just shared with you, all these disruptions, the changes, the massive chaos, which it's going to manifest itself in society politically. You already see that, the haves versus the have-not. Get those rich guys, the poor guys are too lazy to work, that kind of nonsense, which is just narratives. That's how it's going to manifest itself. But essentially, we're going to look back 10, 15 years from now and say, man, that was the greatest depression of the 2020s. Because if you think about it, if you really look at the numbers, and if you torture data enough, it confesses. Just preface that. So anybody can get whatever they want out of data, the way that they frame it and the way that they position it. But if you even look at small business figures that they put out, the past 2 years of this disruptive economy have literally destroyed small businesses. There was a survey that was just put out to them where it was almost like half of them didn't even know that they would be in business 6 months from now. So they've really, really suffered, and that employs, by the way, 70% of your workforce, small businesses used to anyway.
Wow.
So yeah. So is it a recession? I would argue it's a depression already for some folks, right? There are people that can't afford their rents. There are people that can't afford, basic necessities, because you're in an environment too where we've had a massive, massive inflation of the currency all over the world, but in the US too, which then has 2 outcomes. When you have inflation, 2 things happen. Asset inflation. So people that have stuff, they see the prices of everything go up. Oh, my real estate went up. Oh, my stock portfolio, or all of the things that I own have gone up. But on the other end of the spectrum, you also see price inflation. Now, price inflation is, folks see everything that they need to survive skyrocket in price. So think about it on the opposite side of the spectrum, right? Yes, you because the media just focuses on, shiny things, kind of. and paints this picture that everything is fine and dandy. Look, inflation's only 9.1%, right? But if you actually calculate it the way that it was calculated before the data got tortured and the shenanigans started, it's 17.1, according to John Williams with Shadow Stats. And Congress just gave all of their lawyers and their staffers a 21% pay increase. So it's probably closer to 25 if they gave them 21% increase. But so the folks that buy food, clothes, they're already in a depression.
Yeah.
I mean, they already have to make decisions. Do I pay my rent and do I eat, or what do I do? Where on the other side of course of the economy, it's not. So that's kind of what's going on right now. We're sort of, I mean, and at the time of recording, yes, we're in a collapse, controlled, because it all depends how hard you want the landing to be. And that's why I say these folks are trying to slowly just bring it down instead of just letting it all fall like a house of cards. By their own admission. That's not me saying, they're telling you this is what's going on, talking about the Great Reset. But I'll say this, once you understand the environment, you understand the dangers, and you understand what's actually going on, there's another side of this. And it's a side of opportunities of a lifetime for people. I mean, if you live right now and you're on, I'm a little bit older than you, so I'm 43 right now. But if you're like in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I mean, it is an opportunity of a lifetime, to build incredible businesses, to build incredible wealth. Just think of if you read history, and look at what happened in times of similar to this is going to be much worse than what happened in the 20s and the 30s. In my opinion, that's my take, my opinion. But if you look at what happened there were fortunes created during that time that we still know the names of all the families. You look at businesses and buildings still has their names on it. So we're going to have the same opportunity available. I didn't mention 60 and 70 year olds. There's going to be different challenges for folks in those groups, because the social contract, here's another thing that the news is not going to tell you. The social contract essentially has been broken in the sense that these pensions that folks thought that they were going to have, it's all gone. It's gone. The money's not there. Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book, Who Stole My Pension? That was a book, I think 2 years ago that came out. That was a must read for anyone that wanted to understand what was going on with pensions. And that's a whole podcast by itself. But the short is, the money's gone. Whether it's corporations, whether it's federal pensions, whether it's state, whether it's local, it's gone. And folks don't know that yet, because in the political climate right now, who's going to come out and say, all right, we know we made these promises to you, but we don't have the money. So, you can either inflate it, you can cut it, or, you could just essentially hope for the best. But there will still be opportunities for them too. I'm just saying they're going to be in a much tougher position, because essentially when you start with a little or some, or you don't have anything, the world is your oyster. But when you've worked your whole life, essentially, and you thought that something was going to happen and now it's not happening, it's going to be much, much tougher, because initially there'll be a massive blow first.
So a couple questions for you there. So, and for people listening, regardless of how you feel about this guy, I think I'm not talking about you. He seems to be accurate a lot of the times. Like where I heard the Great Reset, I watch Alex Jones a lot. He can be doom and gloom, but it seems to be pretty freaking accurate. So that's all I'll say about that. And that's where I did first hear about the Great Reset. So first question is, do you think the people you're talking about in Davos and stuff, is it when I watch Alex Jones, it seems that he feels it's bad intentions they have, right? And because I've been watching that, my bias would be, I agree. But do you think it is also something that it's kind of an inevitable thing, like the Great Reset almost has to happen, or is it not? What are your thoughts on that? And then I want to ask you what you're doing to actually take advantage of this opportunity, because that's people like Patrick Bet David and stuff. that's what they've been saying. They're like, yo, yes, this is going to be turbulent, but this will take you from, if you have 100 grand in the bank, you'll have $1 million at the end of this. If you do it right, if you have $1 million, you'll have 10, and it's a way to 10x your wealth, literally, if you or allocate your funds accurately. So, but first, bad intentions or inevitable, or both?
I know that's a great question. So the first thing is that I would say is, first of all, it was inevitable. I mean, how long could this go on? Everybody thought that this was kind of over by like 2010. I remember, when I really, really started to study and understand the world financial system and the world monetary system, essentially a lot of people were saying this can't go past 2010. Like, how is it possible? Like, trillions of dollars are owed. I mean, if you could type in a search engine like world, total world debt or something, like it'll blow your mind. Like, go to US debt, type in US debt clock or something.
Oh, I've heard of it.
And you'll see all of the money that's owed. So it's like, we're at the end of this. So was it inevitable? Yes, I would say. I mean, it was a debt-based monetary system. All these debt-based monetary system essentially ends in chaos. It's like, think about it. In the old days, people would put golds with goldsmiths, right? And they would give them certificates. And all of a sudden, goldsmiths figured out that people started trading the gold certificates with each other in an economy, and nobody, came back to claim the gold. So they're like, oh, we'll just issue more gold certificates than the gold that we have. So if you have a run on the gold, then essentially, I mean, there's not enough gold to give to everyone. So that's kind of like the origination of that practice. Now, fast forwarded to today, and I mentioned that this could potentially happen in crypto, and people laughed at me. Oh, this will never happen. That's exactly what happened in the exchanges. That's why they're all going bust. The same kind of thing. If you have a crypto exchange and you go, oh, well, I only have we have a certain amount of Bitcoins, let's just say. And we figure out that of all the people that buy Bitcoin on our exchange, only 10% pull it off the exchange. They all leave it on there. What would you do? Well, an honest person would say, that's great. Let's be good custodians and stewards of their capital. But that's not how it works in the real world. In the real world, it goes, we're going to sell more Bitcoin than what we actually have. And if there's a run on it, we'll just shut down the exchange. Hey, that happened, by the way. So it's like a virtual bank run. That's why they're all going under. Most of them, some of them will survive. And crypto as a whole will survive, and blockchain will survive. All that stuff will do fine, but you're going to have a weed out. So the same thing, back to your question. Yes, this is a weed out. In the same way that this debt system, which has failed, there's been many experiments, it all fails. There's a weed out, and there's a new system that essentially comes about. Now, do they have bad intention? If you study empires, and the decline of empires, they all have similar stages. And I believe we're towards the end stages now where it's looting. This is essentially where the insiders know that the empire is about to collapse, and they loot the treasury, they loot the assets, they get everything. It's now every man and woman for themselves. Yeah. And if you see what's happening, that's why you have perpetual wars. I mean, Julian Assange is sitting in prison for telling people this, that it was money laundering, that essentially the looting phase began in the early 2000s, and it's now ramping up like we've never seen. I mean, look at the money that's been sent to the Ukraine war, for example, which ends up with U.S. weapon contractors, which all these Davos crowds have interested and own the companies and that kind of stuff. So bad intentions, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say it's not just the bad intentions, it's the looting. But another thing that I'll also share with bad intentions is, by their deeds you shall know them. Okay, that's just, by their deeds you shall know them. So I sometimes look at what people have done. Like, who tries to lock down the entire countries, make them stay in their houses, shut down small businesses, the livelihood of folks, and then, keeps their competitors, big giant corporations, open, which essentially sucks away their competition. That's what that was. It was a complete hit job. And that's not, again, this is not a theory. It's not a theory. We all saw it happen. You couldn't go to church and couldn't go to your small business, but you could shop at Costco and Target and Walmart, right? We all saw it happen. It's not a theory, that happened. Yeah. So who would do that? Who would then, regardless of what your thought is like on the medical debate and that kind of stuff, if you're living in a free society, like you can't force people to do things just to participate in society again. I mean, pick up a history book. It's not the good guys that do that. It's usually the really, really bad guys that do that. Yeah. But they painted themselves as good guys again. So again, is this nefarious? By the deeds you shall know them. My opinion is there's a lot of nefariousness here, because look at what they've done. Look at what they keep doing. The fear, right? You can drive humans by fear. They did the same thing in South Africa when I grew up. I saw this all when I was a kid and a young man, lived through all of this stuff. You can make people do anything when you scare the living daylights out of them. I was just recently, I took a trip to visit a friend, and I got on the airplane, and all of a sudden, when I was flying, like the Thursday it was fine, the Sunday I got on an airplane and a third of the plane was mosque. And I'm like, oh, I haven't watched the news probably for like 4 or 5 days. But if I scroll through, they're probably scaring the daylights out of people again over something. And wouldn't you have it? I turn it on and it's just scare, fear. And I'm like, it's not hard. So yeah, I would say nefarious. So what can people do to put them on the right side? Let's talk solutions. I would say here's the biggest thing, right, during this time is have a strategy. Shocker, have a strategy. But what does the strategy entail? So I talk, one of my mantras is what survives hard times? Hard people and hard assets. Hard people and hard assets. So when you think about from a strategy, the first thing is you start with yourself. Your mind is going to be your most important asset. I mean, you're your most important asset, but you have to be mentally, physically, and spiritually as strong as you've ever been in your life. Like from a mindset standpoint, there's a Chinese proverb, and I butcher quotes and proverbs all the time, but it's essentially rather be a warrior in the garden than a gardener at war, something to that effect. I've heard right? That. And it's the U.S. military, certain sections of them talk about parabellum, the concept of parabellum, which is if you want a peace, prepare for war, essentially. That's the type of mindset that you need to have. You want to have a renegade mindset. Don't believe anything that you're seeing out there. I would say source your sources. Read widely. I read a ton of stuff, but I don't believe anything. I form my own opinion and my own conclusion, and I try to bring stuff together, right? So that's the first thing. Get in the best shape of your life. You're not going to survive what's coming if you're overweight, lazy, and depressed. Get some sun, get out, get exercise, and then connect with your creator. Then I would also say, like, a big thing to do too is on a daily ritual, like have thinking time. Like what I do is I have a framework that I work through. I call it a reset framework, which I built. And what I then do is I look at it and I identify dangers to myself, my family, my businesses, my investments. Then after that, I look at the opportunities that exist in that framework. There's so much opportunities. Then I start to look at what skill sets I have and who else has those skill sets to help me execute on some of these opportunities. The next thing that you need to have is a community, common unity, community, a community of like-minded people. And they don't have to just be in your neighbor. They could be all over the place now with the tools that we have. But have like-minded people. And what I mean by like-minded people is not echo chambers. It's people that have the same values that you have, the same principles, the same belief systems, that also own their own outcomes. They're responsible, and they're preparing. And they're preparing for chaos. If it doesn't happen, you're still going to be well off. Then then it becomes your business and investment. So from a from a business opportunity, look at the challenges that people have and the problems. There's so many right now. I can't even, and that's another thing I write down every day. What are the 10 things that people are struggling with right now? And what of those things can I actually help them with? Here's one of the things that I was thinking about the other day, just to throw out ideas for folks. And there's already a guy capitalizing on this trend. I see this trend of privacy because everything is out there. Nothing is private. Everything is recorded. Everything is, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. We could really get Matrix on this, but it's kind of crazy. There's already a person that have developed a system, and he's written a book about this, of essentially how to re-privatize your life and not be tracked and traced and recorded and like all this kind of stuff. Now, people would say, why would this be important to anyone? Hey, remember that? What are the tracking that they had, the contact tracing, that kind of stuff? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that kind of. Some people don't like to be tracked and traced. Like, who we tracked and traced in South Africa as a young boy growing up? Deer that we hunted. That's not a good feeling to be tracked and traced. So there's a trend for you, but just think about it. There's so many, like if you're young, right, and cryptocurrencies and blockchain, how many people don't? How many people don't know anything about the privacy cryptos that you can educate them? There's projects where that they're going to solve the solution of money, right? Because Bitcoin is an open ledger. It's essentially an Excel sheet on the internet that if you can figure out someone's address, where the money's coming from and who the money's coming to, or who the money's going to. It's not private. There's privacy projects. How about smart contracts, which would be built on Ethereum, let's say? Well, I can guarantee you weapons contractors and big pharma and all these people are not going to put smart contracts on a blockchain, which is publicly available and viewable to everyone. So there's already smart contracts on privacy platforms. So anyway, nobody knows anything about this. I know enough just to be dangerous. I'm not an expert in that, but I can see how that type of stuff is going to be huge. So, food. Oh my goodness. Who's killing it right now? The people in my network and by killing it, meaning like very successful in their businesses, is all these folks that just started homesteading and basically recording what they're doing, how they're growing their food, what they tried, because it's like, look, if you just started it, where do we even start? Right. Yeah. But there's a guy that he's like, hey, here's what we're doing. We bought this piece of land. We built this house. This is what we did the first couple of weeks. And it's like they're crushing it. They're absolutely, just think about that niche, because that in the food disruption, there's going to be people that want to eat great, organic, healthy food. They don't want to eat bugs, which is basically to us now. Yeah. They're really pushing it when the celebrities are coming out.
I know, dude. It's bad.
So anyway, again, not my opinion. Just, it's out there. So there's huge opportunities. And then as an investor, here are some of the things that I would say from a strategy, because the big thing is protect capital and then build capital. You're going to need cash. And that's why I love Patrick Bet-David. I love the stuff that Patrick puts out. You're going to need cash. You want cash. Be very careful where you put cash. And people would say, MC, but the money's losing value. But all that kind of stuff. You're going to need cash in a deflationary economy, which we're already seeing a lot of deflation coming in because people are starting to realize, hey, it's a recession and probably more likely a depression. You're going to see assets come down significantly in value, and you want to have cash to capitalize on that. We have a strategy that folks can check out at your own banking system. We warehouse in insurance companies, mutual insurance companies outside of stock markets. They've been around pre-Civil War, some of them. And those folks have been great custodians, great stewards of capital. That is where a lot of the family offices, the ultra wealthy corporations and banks are actually putting money right now. Cash you need to have. Then the second thing is what survives monetary resets? Real money, gold and silver. You have to have some exposure to gold and silver. Again, it doesn't matter what it's going to be priced in when the new system comes in, but if you have it, you have something that's physical that you can touch, that's been money for centuries. So you have that portion of it. Then a cash flow portfolio. I wrote a book called The 21 Best Cash Flow Niches because I believe you need diversified income streams. If you're only in single family and that's where you're getting your checks from, you could get screwed. If you're only in multifamily, if you only have one stream of income, if it's only your business, if it's within your business, try to add more streams. If it's a physical business, add a digital side to it. Like figure out, how do I take my business and add more streams of just what I already have? Then you look at other cash flow streams of businesses that would survive and do well that you could potentially invest in, or assets that you can invest in. And then on the growth side, the fourth area is look at bottlenecks, areas of asymmetry, because the speculators, there's savers, there's investors, there's speculators, and there's gamblers. A speculator takes advantage of politically distorted situations in a marketplace. So what do I mean by that? Energy. See what they did to energy? They're literally, if a dinosaur can be connected to it, they're cutting it off. So what does that do? There's only 4 sources that the world can actually be powered right now, that can produce enough supply for the demand that exists. And that's oil, that's natural gas, that's nuclear, and that's coal. But these are all it's literally expletives that I'm telling you right now to the majority of the public. But that powers the entire planet. Great for solar. You could do it on your personal residence. Great for wind. It can work in certain situations. Hydroelectric projects are great. But guess what? You can't power an entire world on that. You don't have the infrastructure yet. It could take 10, 15 years for it. Now, reasonable people with non-nefarious agendas would say, let's build out this infrastructure, then we transition over from the fossil fuels to the green. Or non-nefarious people. Nefarious people would just cut it off and say, we're calling this a transitioning period, and then essentially they take it over, and now there's not enough energy. And that's what we're starting to see already. Now, how do you make money in that? That's a huge speculative opportunity for folks, because you're going to see the price of oil continue to go up. So instead of complaining about your gas prices going up, you're actually going to just be on the right side of this, because it's going to go there anyway, folks. It's not going to stop. So how can you trade the oil in that, the natural gas? How can you trade the uranium? And folks that have already traded that stuff has made fortunes already over the past 12 months. There's other, by the way, opportunities just like the energy, the food one. Oh my goodness. You look at the fertilizer market, the war in Ukraine, essentially, with Russia invading Ukraine. What's kind of comical about this is you're boycotting the sanctions, and I'm meaning it not a funny way. It's just you have to be either very, very evil. You can't be that stupid to put sanctions on a country that produces so much oil and natural gas and all these commodities that are used to make other things like fertilizer, which is used in farming to grow food. So food is there's a great play on the food side, in the agri side. There's a great play in base metals. Jim Rogers' biggest position, one of his biggest positions is copper, because of the electrical vehicles. Instead of buying Tesla shares, he invests in copper because it's going to be used by all these electrical companies to build the batteries. So pick your market. There's these asymmetric opportunities for investors where all you have to do is see where capital is moving to, and then position yourself there to where it's coming. By using common sense. And I talk a lot about ideological investing versus like the physical reality investing. So if you look at what, from a physical reality, 1 + 1 = 2, kind of like what's going on, you can position yourself there and you can make a fortune. Again, I'm very excited about these times that we're living in. I think it's incredible to be alive. Don't get sucked into the doomy and the gloomy stuff, There's a ton, see it for what it is and just accept it. And then, all right, this is it. This is the environment that I'm in. These are the dangers, but here's the plethora of opportunities. And this way you'll be able to take care of yourself, your family, your businesses, and your investments.
Dude, Incredible, man. That is a mic drop right there. That is awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you got a run. So last thing is just let us know where people can stay in contact, like website, social media. And yeah, again, appreciate you coming on.
No, appreciate it. So cashflowninja.com is where everything's at. Cashflowninja.com. What we'll do is if folks want to stay in touch with us, they could sign up for our newsletter at cashflowninja.com/subscribe, because we are all over social media, but you never know. I mean, how crazy the world is and what you can and cannot say. I mean, you might be banned in a couple of months for saying we're in a depression, or a recession even, in our field. So just check us out at cashflowninja.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll be informed of everything that we share, all our episodes that we publish it, where we publish it, and stay in touch. Because we put out things on a weekly basis that we think is important for business owners and investors, and how you could put yourself on the right side of this chaos. It could be the worst of times, or it could be the best of times. I'm going to live through this time and approach it from a sense of adventure, and look at it as an obstacle course, right? That you have to go through. It's going to be tough, but hard people and hard assets, they're going to be on the right side of this.
Perfect, man. Thank you again.
Thank you.